Niner faithful, there is a genuinely fascinating story developing right now about the future home of this franchise's practice operations, and the timing and the reasoning behind it deserve a much closer look than the official explanation is currently providing. The 49ers are exploring a relocation of their practice facility away from its current location next to Levi's Stadium. And the explanation the organization is offering does not fully add up when you examine the full context of what has been happening with this team for the past decade. Here is the exact quote that started this entire conversation, reported by Vic Tafur of The Athletic in a piece featuring 49ers CEO Jed York discussing the franchise's role in hosting Super Bowl LX and Levi's Stadium's emergence as a premier global sports destination. Buried within that piece was this detail: the 49ers are exploring a possible nearby relocation as they are running out of space at and next to Levi's Stadium. York framed the broader conversation around winning championships, noting the organization has been to 3 Super Bowls in the last 30 years without winning any, and that the appetite within the building and among the fan base is for finally breaking through. But the specific framing around running out of space deserves real scrutiny, because nothing about the physical footprint of the SAP Performance Facility or the practice field surrounding Levi's Stadium has fundamentally changed in recent memory. There have been no significant expansions. There have been no major renovations that would suddenly create a space crunch in 2026 that did not exist in previous seasons. The facility has operated within essentially the same footprint for years, and the sudden emergence of a space limitation argument, right as this conversation gains public traction, is worth examining alongside a different and more uncomfortable factor that has been part of the broader conversation around this organization for the better part of a year now. The elephant in the room here is the massive electrical substation that sits directly adjacent to and visually overlooking the 49ers practice field. This is not a minor or hidden structure. Anyone who has seen footage or photographs of 49ers practices over the years has likely noticed the imposing electrical infrastructure looming over the field. An unusual and frankly strange visual presence for a billion-dollar professional sports organization's primary training facility. And this is not a new concern that has only recently surfaced. Multiple 49ers players voiced concerns about this exact issue during interviews conducted around Super Bowl week, when the topic became a significant point of media conversation. These are professional athletes whose careers and financial livelihoods depend entirely on the health and functionality of their bodies, and several of them have specifically and publicly stated that if this electrical exposure is impacting their physical well-being in any way, even a small percentage, they would genuinely like to know about it. Jed York directly addressed and dismissed this concern on the Kay Adams Show in the lead-up to the Super Bowl, shutting down the conversation in a way that frankly does not align logically with how a responsible organizational leader should respond to legitimate player concerns about workplace safety. And here is the broader context that makes this entire situation worth examining critically. The 49ers have been one of the most injured teams in the National Football League for more than a decade now, a documented and statistically verifiable pattern that goes well beyond simple bad luck or randomized variance. A significant portion of those injuries have specifically been soft tissue injuries, the exact category of physical breakdown that some research has linked to elevated electromagnetic field exposure, which can contribute to the breakdown of collagen in connective tissue. To be completely clear about the limits of what we actually know here, nobody is claiming with certainty that EMP exposure from this substation is definitively causing the 49ers' well-documented injury problems. That would be an overreach based on the available evidence. But here is the question that deserves a direct answer from this organization's leadership. Why not investigate it? Why not exhaust every possible avenue to protect what is, by any reasonable financial measure, an $8 to $10 billion investment in a professional football organization when the athletes whose bodies generate that value have specifically and repeatedly voiced concerns about a very specific, very visible, and very unusual environmental factor sitting directly above where they train every single day. Consider the parallel with what is currently happening across the league with World Cup preparation. Multiple NFL stadiums that normally operate with artificial turf surfaces have temporarily installed natural grass specifically to accommodate World Cup soccer matches, because FIFA and the players competing in this tournament understand and prioritize the documented physical benefits of grass surfaces over artificial turf when it comes to injury prevention and recovery. NFL players have consistently and publicly stated that recovery feels significantly worse after playing on turf, that the physical impact of turf surfaces creates additional wear and tear that grass simply does not produce in the same way. If NFL stadium operators are capable of installing temporary grass surfaces for a soccer tournament, the question of why that same prioritization of player safety does not consistently extend to the league's own product becomes a genuinely fair one to ask. The historical context matters here too. The 49ers have practiced in this general location since the late 1980s, and yes, that included the height of the franchise's dynasty years under Bill Walsh and the championship runs that followed. But the specific electrical substation in question was expanded when Levi's Stadium was constructed, and the injury patterns that have plagued this organization for more than a decade align with the timeline following that expansion. Correlation is not causation, and nobody should treat this as definitively proven. But the timeline alignment is, at minimum, worth genuine investigation rather than dismissal. Ask yourself a simple personal question. Would you personally choose to purchase a home directly adjacent to a major electrical substation? Most reasonable people would answer no, recognizing that even without absolute scientific certainty about every potential health implication. The prudent and protective choice is to avoid unnecessary proximity to that kind of infrastructure when alternatives exist. A professional football organization representing an investment worth billions of dollars and employing athletes whose physical health directly determines the value of that investment should arguably apply the same protective logic. If relocating the practice facility eliminates even a small percentage of unnecessary injury risk, the cost of that relocation becomes a sound business decision regardless of whether the substation concern is ever definitively proven or conclusively dismissed. The cynical but entirely plausible read on this situation is that the 49ers organization is now quietly moving toward exactly this kind of relocation while simultaneously crafting a public explanation centered around running out of space rather than acknowledging the substation concerns that have generated unwanted media attention and player pushback over the past year. We will likely never get a direct admission from this organization connecting the relocation decision to the electrical substation concerns specifically, because doing so would represent an implicit acknowledgement that the previous public dismissal of those concerns was inadequate. But the timing of this relocation conversation, emerging specifically now after a year of sustained public attention on the substation issue, deserves to be viewed with at least some healthy skepticism about the stated reasoning. Now let us shift to something genuinely uplifting, because the update on George Kittle's recovery from his Achilles injury is exactly the kind of news that should have every single Niner fan feeling significantly better about this team's outlook heading into the 2026 season. Footage shared by Brad of SF Niners, who received an exclusive invite directly from Kittle himself to observe his training session at Tight End University in Nashville, shows a player who looks remarkably far along in his recovery from a torn Achilles suffered against the Eagles in the wild-card round of the playoffs back in January. Watch the movement in this footage and the conclusion is genuinely striking. There is no visible limp. Kittle has reportedly stated he is currently running at speeds in the range of 15 to 16 miles per hour, which represents legitimate functional explosiveness for a player at this stage of an Achilles recovery. He is showing comfort with stop-and-start movement patterns, putting real pressure through the repaired tendon in ways that demonstrate genuine confidence in its structural integrity. He is demonstrating lateral movement capability that, while still measured and controlled, shows real progress toward the kind of cutting and change of direction ability that defines his game at full health. This is a player who, based on everything visible in this recovery footage, genuinely has a realistic opportunity to be available for Week 1 of the regular season, even accounting for the additional travel and logistical demands of the season-opening trip to Melbourne, Australia. That timeline, just 5 months removed from a serious Achilles tear, represents an excellent recovery trajectory by any reasonable medical standard, and it should give every 49ers fan legitimate reason for opting him one of the most respected players in the league regardless of team allegiance. Combine the genuinely encouraging Kittle recovery news with the ongoing Mac Jones trade speculation, where his value as a proven backup quarterback who went 5-3 in starts last season while leading the NFL in passing yards per game during stretches of his playing time creates real leverage for San Francisco if a team facing a quarterback emergency comes calling with significant draft compensation, and you have a 49ers organization navigating multiple genuinely interesting storylines simultaneously heading into the heart of the offseason calendar. Niner faithful, the comments section is open and this conversation deserves your honest engagement. Do you believe the timing of this practice facility relocation has anything to do with the electrical substation concerns players have voiced? Or is the stated reasoning about running out of space the full and complete explanation? How encouraged are you by George Kittle's recovery footage, and do you believe he is genuinely on track for a Week 1 return? And should the 49ers trade Mac Jones if the right offer comes along, given Curtis Roar's development this offseason? Drop everything you have got in the comments section below, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel because this 49ers offseason continues to deliver genuinely fascinating storylines every single week. Let's go, Niners.